How about you introduce yourself? Just give me a little bit about your life.
Well, let's see. My name's Ben. I'm 35 years old. Been, I guess you could say I've traveled around the world a couple of times by now, and mostly with military oriented stuff. A little bit of an all-around nerd and an aspiring filmmaker.
Let's start with the filmmaking stuff. When in your life did you realize you wanted to pursue that?
Honestly, it was, let's see, time frame wise, we're going back to like 2006, for practically the Stone Age for some people. I feel ancient even saying that. Uh, it was basically the age of like LimeWire and shit like that, where people would start throwing stuff online to download, whether it be legitimate or copywritten. And a big thing back in the day was anime music videos, AMVs, right?
Mhm.
And so people would basically take their favorite show, take their favorite anime, their movie, whatever, what have you, and then they would synchronize it to music, much like you would see with commercials and big and action sequences with movies and things like that, and they'd make it all pretty and stuff. Well, admittedly, I got a little curious about that. By the time I turned 16, I was old enough to get my first computer, and I noticed a little free program on there called Windows Movie Maker. So I started playing around with video editing at that point, and then found myself saving up enough money to buy a small camera. And it just so happened that a couple of my friends were movie nerds. And so I was like, okay, I got a camera. We've all got energy. We have nothing but time on our hands. Let's fucking make something. So we started with some test shots, and just kind of like, I think one of our first clips was of a murderous ambush where somebody sneaks up on somebody else, and you see everything is played out in shadow, kind of like some Alfred Hitchcock type stuff. And as I make the slashing motion on the person's throat, which, mind you, they're only seeing the shadows, you see a shadow of what's presumed to be blood spray from the throat. Turns out it was nothing but a garden hose that was held up to the front of the body to emulate blood. And so we're looking over at the shots and everything, and I'm like, well, shit, that was actually kind of cool. It looked legitimate, and we did okay. Let's see about this. And so we start making little short films. I think the one that we actually had some preparation, I use with air quotes, would be a Rambo parody right after we saw whichever one came out in 2007. I forget. It's like Rambo 4, some shit like that.
So that was the start of like your so-called career in filmmaking.
Yeah, or the career that's forever in development hell, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I can
Is
definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And so, I would do a little project here and there with my friends, and then I went into the military. Came back after a trip to Turkey where I had some money in my pocket, got a new camera, and I was like, hey, how about we make a sequel to the thing that started it all? So we made this little video called Rambo Revisited, and in spite of it was slapdash, to put it lightly, very, very lightly. The only thing that I think was shown to be decent about it was the editing itself, which was my part. But I was like, okay, this actually kind of looks good a little bit if you take it for what it's worth and maybe bludgeon yourself with a hammer a couple of times. Okay, it's nice, nice. What if I was to actually get some people that were serious about this? Fast forward to 2016, January of 2016. I get out of the military and I'm going to film school, and I'm basically knocking everything out of the park. The cinematography section, been doing that for years. The editing section, that's what got me started. The sound editing, not much different from the video editing. You just gotta match up everything on the timeline. Fantastic. Boom, 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 getting it knocked out. And then because of job circumstances, I had to move and drop out of school.
What was the
So
reason for that, if you don't mind me asking?
part of it was a tumultuous marriage where essentially I was doing everything, including taking care of the kids and everything, in spite of working 13-hour days and going to school full time. So it's basically, boom, boom, boom. You're working, you come home, you have to take care of the kids and everything, you have to take care of her. Now you're going to school, rinse and repeat, and the other person involved that should be doing something is not really doing much of anything, and she's just kind of chilling.
It was a one-side relationship, simple
hmm
terms.
Very much so. Throw in a case of Stockholm syndrome and psychological abuse and bullshit. It was just not good. And so my family was looking at everything from the sidelines. They're like, "Hey, how about you move back to your home state? We can set you up, and you can pursue everything once you settle down over there." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, cool." Still had to drop out though because it was physical classes and I was moving multiple hours and a state line away.
When did you realize that you wanted to pursue film? Like, why not something else?
Essentially, it was midway through my school for it because I had a whole slew of ideas that just kind of came forward to me. And there's actually one that I'm honestly working on right now with regards to the scripting and all that. Not sure if it'll ever get off the ground, but I've told the basic premise to a couple of people that I trust, and they say that if I can actually get everything nailed down, that I might have a hit on my hands on the independent film scene.
Oh, what's the idea you have so far?
So essentially, and it's actually got a pretty cool name too. I've heard that apparently there's some other stuff that popped up recently that have the same name, but this has been brewing for multitudes of years. But it's the name of it's going to be called, or it would be called Dead Drop in reference to one of the things that's used in the movie. And essentially, a person who is in the military elects to get out and still works for the Department of Defense, but is essentially it's a black operation. There's no official ties to uh, the Department of Defense. So he's going undercover to investigate a homegrown terrorist cell, which has not been able to be tracked easily because of their means of communication being through dead drops. And dead drops are essentially data caches. It's picture yourself walking through a small town, right?
Hmm.
And you have just a single little sticky note that says third building down in the mortar in the alley. And so you go, there's this red brick building, there's a small alley to it. You look down the alley and there's a cover or there's something sticking out of the mortar. Turns out to be a little flash drive. You plug something in there, you pull the data out of it, there you go. You've got some information, some decentralized information. Same thing with, little tubes or like little containers that are buried underground or something. You're given very little information to find the thing and it's not traceable anywhere because it's completely off grid. And so that's what a dead drop is. And so this person goes to his hometown, meets up with some people. Turns out that they are with that group, but it's not a homegrown terrorist cell. It is a militia that's trying to basically counter the actions of a company that's making weapons of mass destruction under the Department of Defense's nose and selling it to near peer entities, enemy countries essentially. And so he tries to reach out to his guys, get some backup and everything. And he's like, "Hey, we got this shit going on." He gets blackballed, which essentially, he gets blacklisted, cut out from
Yeah,
everything. So he's doing everything solo now. And so he groups up and tries to take care of everything from within.
yeah.
And that's basically the premise of the movie.
I think it sounds pretty interesting. So personal experiences, is it like personal experiences and like stories that like you helps you make your content?
Um, little bit of a little bit of research. I would throw in a little bit of deployment or of military knowledge in there just by being in the military myself, how everything is structured. So that would essentially be it because I was in the Air Force for 7 years. On the logistical side of things, I went to Turkey, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and so it was a pretty interesting mix of things.
What was it like for you?
It was challenging but interesting at the same time, and I was my profession. So we have these specialty codes, not just in the Air Force but in all military branches that basically tell you what your job is. Like for Army and I think Marines, it's MOS, which is like main occupation specialty or some shit. For Air Force, it's AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code. And so for mine is a 2T2X1, and that is air transportation specialist. Long story short, if it's going out, it's getting on a plane. If it's getting on a plane, then we are both the first and the last people to mess with it. That includes everything from humanitarian supplies to munitions to people, vehicles, and even, sadly, human remains. Basically, we're the flight line guys that handle everything from start to finish.
So it's like only serious stuff that you guys dealt with.
Essentially.
Why did you decide to go into the Air Force?
And honestly, it was just to try and get a jump start on things because I was one of those people that was a typical slacker. And so, being a bit of a slacker at school, I had the aptitude for it, but there were certain situations where I was just way too fucking lazy for my own good. I'll admit to that. I was kind of looking towards the end of my high school tenure, and things didn't exactly work out because I was looking at being held back due to the high school not accepting the foreign language credit that I already had on the books for my previous school. Because my previous school, they taught German and Spanish. Well, I went for German because everybody spoke Spanish. So I wanted to be that kid. Well, I ended up moving halfway through my high school over to a school that didn't teach German. It only taught Spanish, and as such, it didn't recognize the German foreign language credit as a recognized credit. So yeah, it basically pushed me back a year because of it. And so basically, I was looking at it, I was like, okay, either I graduate late or I drop out, get a GED, go into the Air Force. Or go into the military in general, and I was shooting for Air Force.
You said you dropped out, you got your GED. What was the reaction of your parents, or like at least your folks, in that way?
Oh, my parents were 100% for it because they saw me struggling and it wasn't looking good. So it was either I be the oldest person in my graduating class or I jumpstart everything and get right back to within my age group. And so I was kind of looking at the options and I was like, you know what? I'll go military on this one. And turned out that at the time, this was about June of 2007 whenever I made the decision. And at the time, the Air Force was being real choosy on who they were accepting. And so if you had a GED, it wasn't a clear cut path. You had to get 15 college credit hours before you would be accepted. What I ended up doing was I dropped out, got my GED, got my driver's license, and then worked essentially as the only way I could describe it as bitch boy because I didn't have any kind of specialties about me. I was working with a construction company. I didn't know how to weld. I could run saws and hammers and stuff, but I mean, there was no specialty about me. So I was just a person that did everything that everybody else wasn't doing. And so I worked there for a couple of months, saved up enough money to pay for all 15 credit hours within one semester, just knocked that out. And then October the following year, I was shipping out to basic.
So were you like the bus boy of that kind of job? If you get what I'm saying?
Essentially, I was. Have you ever heard the term gopher?
I know what it means. Yeah.
It's like go for this, go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, That's basically me. Like I was. I guess for a reference, there's a town in Texas called Kima. It's right on the coast. Real pretty place, but it's really hot. And this was in the middle of July.
Hello there. Thank you for watching as far as you got. And if you want to see some more of my content, check out my other channel, Ronic1012, which is always down in the description of my videos. So whatever you look at, you'll find it down there. And I would love for you to check out my other content where I mostly post my videos from school and like my TikToks and stuff like that. It's always a pleasure having you. Enjoy the rest of the video. Subscribe later.
There was a Goodyear tire shop that was being built, and they had already laid the support braces down on it, but they needed to throw plywood on there in order to start everything for the roofing. Well, it's really freaking windy over there. So here I am. I'm about 6 foot tall and 140 pounds soaking wet, and I'm holding these 8 foot by 4 foot things of plywood, which are basically ginormous sails, trying to manipulate them and move them over to the people that are sitting on the on the
Mhm.
frame to nail it all down, and they're just seeing me take off like a freaking kite.
You moved into your family's or place. What was it like
um,
after that?
I moved back to my home state.
Okay.
I didn't move in with my parents or anything. They helped me find a rental house, and then I moved my family in there. After a couple of years, a divorce happened, and so a very one-sided divorce, and so I was fighting through that, basically just trying to get everything back together. And I guess in the midst of all of that, I had a couple of ideas for little independent films, and I was making connections here and there, just, you know, kind of testing the waters, seeing what's available. And then one of my best friends, who actually worked with me on the films that essentially started it all back in 2006, 2007, he was like, I have an idea, but I don't have the wherewithal to do it, technically. Do you want to start a podcast together? And I was like, okay, fuck it, let's give it a shot. So that's essentially where the podcast came into being. And so essentially that's basically where everything ended up until present day, where we're still building up from that. And meanwhile, like essentially my work is I'm basically going all over the place like a chicken with my head cut off. Working, 10 and 13-hour days, then running a podcast and collaborating with other people with regards to our Twitch and stuff, with the hopes of getting something started with film as well. It's basically everything is kind of branching off into this multifaceted sort of thing that's actually gaining some semblance of traction, which I'm actually kind of surprised.
So you're like really busy. You're like on the grind, pretty much.
Oh, definitely. Like there's two things that are always present: a nose to the grindstone and a foot up the ass. That's basically what's going on with
Yeah.
me.
Not to be like not in your personal life or anything, but how old are your kids?
One is 10 and the other is 8.
Okay, so they're still technically kids, not teenagers or
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Yeah, no.
How did they feel about movie? How did they feel about, or did you take them with you?
Well, with regards to the whole moving stuff, they didn't want to go initially, obviously, because, change of scenery is always
Yeah.
bad, or is always traumatic for little ones at the time. And then whenever the whole divorce happened, I had met my ex when I was in the military. She's from Massachusetts. I'm from Texas. She wanted to move back to Massachusetts. And so she ended up taking the kids there, and they were originally okay with it, but then when it comes to one-sided divorces and everything, the person that's always there essentially has free reign regarding how people can perceive you if the other person's not there. So essentially, it's the stereotypical, keeping the kids from the person and saying these horrible things about them to try and do all that. It's it's rough stuff. It's not to dance around it or anything, but you get what I mean.
I get what
You
you mean.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. How do you handle everything? Like you, as we mentioned, you have like multiple things going on a daily basis. How do you handle the pressure of running all of it and dealing with everything?
Well, I started it out by essentially manhandling everything. I would do the editing, I do the promotion, I do, of course, the recording and everything. But lately, I've been delegating things out among the other people that are, participating with, because the podcast in itself typically has 5 people in its roster. So it's, myself, which I'm doing the recording and the editing, and then there are my friends Matt, Dalton, and Connor, who I've known since high school. Those were actually the main people that were working with me on the short films. And then a more recent person who's been with us for about 4 years, Jace. It was essentially an outlet. It was during the whole divorce and everything, and my friend Dalton looked at it as a creative outlet because he knows, like, I'm the kind of person that whenever things come to a head, or I'm stressed out about something or what have you, I'm the person that likes to get my hands dirty. I like to be creative, do stuff. He planted the seed in my head about the podcast and everything as a creative outlet that other people can participate with, that doesn't take something as heavily structured and heavily coordinated as a film project.
And with comedy, it helps you like as like an outlet kind of like
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's essentially morphed into. I think Matt put it best. He said it's a podcast for the outcast, which honestly it works so well. I almost hate it. Where we talk about anything, make fun of everything, nothing is off the table, and apparently there's a bit of an audience for that. So,
I
despite
don't
being rough around the edges with humor, we still get some people that laugh.
I only got a chance to look at it since I had school and everything, but I definitely could tell it was like definitely that kind of podcast where even I, not just because of the interview, but I will definitely be still listening. It's
Hmm.
definitely something that you would, if somebody who just needs something to laugh to is. So
Hmm.
congrats on that. Say that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. What's the process to coming up with new material, or is it just four friends around, like a campfire in a sense or something?
It started like that. Um, the earlier episodes, I honestly kind of look back at it and cringe because I was experimenting with different styles of editing. Like there was at one point in time where we would have a whole slew of topics, and I would change the audio based on what the topics were, and some of the audio just did not come out very well. it was it was grating as hell on the ears. But in its current form right now, we run everything through a Discord server. And what we do is we have this, we have a special, a we have a text channel that's specifically dedicated to podcast topic ideas. Everybody drops it in there. It's like a little grab bag, and then before recording, we pick those topics and just pull from that. So, actually, as a matter of fact, I can pull up the Discord right now. Podcast topic ideas, because like we've got random stuff like let's see here. Favorite theories can be science or conspiracy. Games that are too serious. How did our humor devolve? The system is set up to be stupid. And then you've got, let's see, favorite spooky media. Dangerous jobs. How much money would it take? True Crime Corner, which is a recurring segment. Weird Things from History, which is a recurring segment. Console Wars, still alive or no longer a competition. Pretty much, it's a grab bag of everything.
It's like a free for all for mainly joking about
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Oh yeah, like we used to be way more packed in with topics. I think at one point in time we were shoving 7 whole topics into 2 hours, and that was an editing nightmare. So I basically came to the guys. I was like, "All right, come on, hear me out. 3, no more than 3. Let's freaking do that." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, sure." So we basically pull 3 topics out of this list, and we go with it. Some people do some preparation, other people just speak off the cuff, and we just take it for what it is.
How come not just like one topic of video?
It's essentially, I look at it as a way of staggering out because everybody wants to talk about something, right? And we're a pretty multifaceted group, I guess you could say. Because with me being prior military, I tend to look into things a little bit different as opposed to my friend Connor, who is uh, way more of a mythology, history, and kind of person, Lovecraftian type stuff, and a lot of video games. And then of course there's Matt, who's the substance swami of the group. Essentially, he's he's the resident pothead, so he's got his own little take on everything. So I mean, everybody just kind of builds up in different ways, and so I feel like if most of the people have a say in what topics can be put onto that episode, then I think it actually helps everything as a whole because everybody's got something to say about it.
What about jokes like that somebody in the group said, and then like let's say you or somebody else got mad at it? Like, has that ever happened?
Well, no, with there are certain things that I try to keep out of discussion, and well, people are people. Sometimes it slips out, but that's one reason why I edit. there's really just nothing that ever gets flagged specifically, but if there is something that is better off not being in it, you know, then it's just up to me to edit that stuff out. And so I tried to make everything be as free flowing as humanly possible, because one thing one thing that I think sets us apart from others is one word: authenticity. Because everybody else is like, hey, we're going to talk about this certain thing and various facets and elements of this certain thing because this is what we're all about. Let it be motivational stuff or real estate or philosophy. Um, insert, the doomsday prepping. Yeah, insert
Yeah.
issue here. We're just, I look at it as, what if somebody just wants to see what the topics are for the day and throw in a couple of dick jokes and have a laugh,
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not everything has to be that structured. Not everything has to be that freaking rigid. Have it free flowing, have it be like an actual hangout.
Your jokes sometimes, like what I got from the first one, they had like jokes referencing like childhoods and stuff like that. Is that like is that just like a joke thing, or like is that like a coping thing?
I think it might be a little mix of both depending on who's saying it, because being the best, or the main people that you look to for dark humor is anyone in a blue collar oriented job, anyone that's military or former military, and anyone that's a first responder. Myself, former military. My friend Matt, he's also former military, but also has done warehouse work on the side and all that shit. And, also a pretty rough upbringing, which kind of adds to it. And then, of course, my friend Dalton, who's spent 16 of his 32 years of life in the electrical trade. So there's some pretty crazy shit that happens at that. Then, of course, you throw in just Connor and Dalton, who have a penchant for degeneracy on occasion. So
Yeah.
that's basically how it all ends up.
How hard our generation has it because of all the pressure.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 100% true. I mean,
it's a bit of a dichotomy, though, if you think about it, because on one end, we've got a shit ton of pressure. On the other end, we got people that just don't want to do a goddamn fucking thing.
Yeah, and then, of course, the ones that, want to do something are then pressured to do better because of the lazy half of our fucking generation.
So I got apple cider Smirnoff or apple cider with caramel Smirnoff. Blanca's hot sauce.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
I'm actually drinking a tasteless vodka from a new brand. It's called Dasani.
God damn it, Connor.
Not sponsored.
Stay hydrated, fuckers.
Did we tell Connor not to start throwing a bunch of brand names everywhere?
You missed it. You both walked away, and he threw down 3 different brand names at once. And I'm just like, okay, we are not sponsored by any of this shit. Please stop. Stop talking about Deep Rock.
I think how far we've been talking about it, everyone will know at this point they're definitely not sponsored.
Yeah, definitely not sponsored. But to quickly tell a fantastic story to that topic, I am 28. I am a manager of 60 people of production. I have been told by my dad, "You're doing great, son," but I was a plant manager at your age. Okay, fuck you.
The fuck?
Thanks, Father. When it comes to my dad, I was literally just like, Dad, I think I want to be an EMT when I grow up. And his literal response looking at me was, don't do it.
Don't do it. Dude, I got that shit growing up, too, for half the careers I wanted to do. But it got even better because then he'll, remind me. He's just like, I just think you put too much pressure on yourself. You don't have to impress me. Oh, really? Really? I don't have to impress you. You were a plant manager at my age, and my brother's the fucking VP of supply chain for goddamn Red Bull.
God damn.
And when my brother gets pissed drunk, he tells me I'm the one that didn't fuck up his life.
Blake.
What the fuck?
I know the guy who almost worked probably directly below your brother.
Yeah, but that's the creepy part. It's if my brother gets pissed drunk, he'll start telling me and everyone else that I'm the one of the two of us that didn't fuck up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you are wildly more successful than me. You are married with children, so I can only imagine which direction that's going.
then that's probably where he fucked up.
No. We both agree 100% that it is definitely my father's fault. He's the one that had to go to therapy for it. I just shrink it away.
Have you ever had, like, your show ever had, like, blooper moments? You know what I mean? Like, you know, funny moments that you just, you love so much?
Oh, yes. Actually, as a matter of fact, I started doing cold opens pretty early with the, before we start, I usually have the recording apps going on the offhand chance that something funny is caught, and then if it's caught, then I put it in as the cold open before the actual introduction to the show. So it's got its own little separate musical segment and everything.
Going back to, like, film, what would you want your career, like, in 20 years, good 20 years, what do you want, how do you want your life to be, you know?
I just now this is gonna sound extremely vague, but it's for a reason, because it doesn't exactly matter how I get there, just that I get there, you
No,
know?
I get that.
As far as the film things are going, ideally, if I could make a living off of some facet of documentary filmmaking or narrative-based filmmaking, then I would love that. Worst case scenario, I do still wish to have a passion project out there that I can have my name behind and be like, hey, check this out. I did it. What do you think? You know, something to be proud of. With regards to the podcast and everything else, which has surprisingly gained a decent bit of traction for what it is, if we can continue gaining momentum, then that might actually be a monetary means towards the end goal in itself.
And before you go, I got a saying where you get 15 seconds to share anything out. And when I say go, you know, just share anything out, company, website,
Alrighty.
and go.
Well, I guess if you want to check us out on Spotify, just look up Memento Morons. We're on Twitch. We're on Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that you get podcasts. And that's about it. Come and have some laughs.